guys, welcome back to my channel. Simone here. Today I'm going to be doing my September wrap up, and I read 15 books in the month of September, which I'm really happy with. I'm really excited about. I had actually a really good reading month. It also included the Scoobydooathon, which I hosted, and my co-hosts were Clint from Reads Readers and Emily from Novel Novels, so I will link down below my playlist because I'm still doing that for Scoobydooathon. But I had a wonderful time. So these the books that I read for that are included in this video. And yes, let's get started with what I read. So the first book that I read in the month of September was I See You by Claire Mackintosh. I have previously read I Let You Go by Claire Mackintosh and gave it a 5-star, really enjoyed it. I'd heard mixed things about Claire Mackintosh in general, and when I read the first one, loved it, so I thought, do you know what, I'm gonna read another one of hers because I had it on my shelf. This follows a lady named Zoe who sees her photo in the classified section of a London newspaper, and it just has a website and a telephone number, I believe, underneath her picture, and she doesn't know why it's there. She has no reason for it to be there, and it doesn't seem to make any sense. But the next day she sees a similar advert, but it has a picture of a different woman in it, and then from there it goes from there. I don't want to say anything else because I don't want to give any spoilers away, but I absolutely loved this one. Again, I gave this a 5-star. I think Claire Mackintosh is definitely a new favourite author of mine. This one just had the perfect amount of suspense and the perfect amount of kind of suspicion that was being thrown on everybody in it, basically. At one point I thought it was everyone, like every single person in it I thought was the person throughout the whole thing, and it was just really kind of creepy, really interestingly done. I love the twists and turns in this. I thought it was really fantastic, and I just think it's definitely a book that it's definitely also a really great read for like beginners to thrillers, I think, because it's not gory in any way. There is the suspense element, but it's not like super scary in any way. It's just kind of thrilling, I guess. And yeah, I absolutely love this. Like I say, definitely gonna read more Claire Mackintosh. I believe she's got a book out called Let Me Lie, is it, the newest one? So I need to read that one as well. Haven't got that one, but yeah, I need to read it. Really excited about this one. Cannot wait, and so glad that I read it. It's the first book of my month. It set me up very well. So then we started the Scoobydooathon, which was from the 2nd to the 15th. So obviously that book I finished on the 1st, I believe. The next one was for the Shaggy prompt for Scoobydooathon, which was to read a book in your best friend's favourite genre, and I chose to read this book because one of my friends from work actually gave me this one, and so it's also non-fiction, which a lot of my friends like to read non-fiction. And it is My Life and His Paws by Wendy Hilling, the story of Ted and how he saved me. So this is about a lady named Wendy Hilling, who is a real lady. This is non-fiction, like I said. So she has an illness called, I always get this wrong, epidermolysis bullosa recessive dystrophic, or known as EB, which causes her skin to blister and tear at the slightest touch. And she has suffered from this. Was something that she was born with, and basically she's had multiple operations, and just lots and lots of things have happened to her. And she has basically trained up her original dog. She had a dog named Monty who she trained up to be one of the canine partners, and the canine partners are basically they are a charity in the UK that helps people and gives them sort of help dogs that kind of are able to help them in everyday life. And Wendy Hilling was a little bit different because she actually trained up her own dog because she already had one. And yeah, so then Ted was the second one that she had, and Ted is actually still alive. I looked up Wendy Hilling on Twitter after I read this one because I loved it so much, and I just wanted to know where she was, because I think this finishes in like 2016. So I was like, I need to know like what's going on. And Ted is still around. He is, I believe, retiring now. In fact, when I finished this book and I looked on Wendy Hilling's Twitter page, she had literally just got, like a couple of weeks before, her new canine partner, which is a little girl dog named Carmen, I think. Carmen? I'm sure it's Carmen. And yeah, I just thought it was really lovely. It was so lovely to read. It's really heartbreaking as well. Like the things that Wendy Hilling has had to go through is horrendous, and I think it's great to see how she can be helped by something, you know, a dog like Ted. Yeah, and I just thought this was a really lovely read. It was definitely 5-star, and it was also a really nice way to start off the Scoobydooathon, reading a book about a dog. I did end up changing a couple of books from my TBR that I did. I will link the TBR down below for you so you can see what I was going to read. There was, I think there was 1 or 2 books that I ended up changing just because of timings, because I ended up going away for the weekend at the end of Scoobydooathon, so I wouldn't have had time to read all of the books that I'd picked. So for the Fred prompt, which was to read a book with blue and white on the cover, I ended up changing my book and I went for Unboxed by Non Pratt, which is a beautiful, beautiful book, and obviously it's white and blue as you can see, and it has like, look at that, it's literally stunning. I absolutely love it. It's also got really big writing, and I read this and I thought there's something kind of different about this physical book, like it felt different. And then I read, let me have a look, at the back there is a thing about why the book is the way it is. So it is actually printed on heavy paper in 2 different colours, black for the text and a pale yellow for the page background. So the background of this is not white pages, they're yellow actually, which I didn't really totally notice because they don't look too different, but when you then see it next to like white pages. So let me show you. Like, oh, you can't really tell, that looks exactly the same. You can kind of, it's probably really difficult to tell, but you can kind of see what I mean. Just literally just chucked a load of books everywhere. But yeah, so it is because it is it's because it is dyslexia friendly. So this helps the way that the writing and the text and that, it stops apparently the blur between black and white, like it having the yellow. So it helps people who have dyslexia who can help them to read better and to be able to find the book easier to read, which I thought was really lovely, and I thought that was a really beautiful, wonderful thing. And then I loved the book as well. It was a 4-star read for me. This basically follows 5 friends. This follows 4 friends named Alex, Ben, Zara and Dean, and they all meet up it's like 6 or 7 years after high school, back at their high school, and they are going to find a mystery box that they kind of left at the school when they were still at school. However, they also had left this box with a 5th friend named Millie, yes, Millie, but Millie has died since she died of cancer since they were in high school, and they've all come back to kind of join together, and it's kind of about their memories, and it's about what happened, and it's about their secrets. This book is really diverse. It has plus size characters, it has lesbian characters, it has bisexual characters, I think it has all different types of people in this, and I just thought it was a really great read. It's a really small book, like it doesn't take long to read at all, like it's about 120 pages or something, and I absolutely loved it. I flew through it. Really, really glad I read this, and like I said, this has been on my shelf for a while, so I'm really glad I chose to read this for the Scoobydooathon. And it also had the like gang element, I think, which when I mean gang, I mean like the mystery gang, not like gangs. But yeah, loved this book, definitely worth the read if you haven't already read it. The 4th book I read was for the Velma prompt for Scoobydooathon, and that was the Genius Protagonist. So I decided to read The Shadowhunters Codex by Cassandra Clare and Joshua Lewis. This is a book from the Mortal Instruments series, and in it has different characters like Magnus Bane, who is a warlock, and he's a genius, and a lot of them are kind of very high up in the clave and stuff which is in the book. This is basically like a textbook of the Shadowhunters like rules and the like how to live the life of a Shadowhunter basically, which takes place obviously in the Shadowhunter world, which is like the Mortal Instruments and that sort of thing. I didn't love this. I gave this a 2-star. I feel like if you're like an avid Shadowhunter fan and you're a massive Cassandra Clare fan, you'll probably really like this, but for me it was that textbook style, and although I knew that going in, I didn't really learn anything different. I feel like it was a bit boring, like there wasn't too much happening. There was just like lots of... The one thing I did like about it, and the reason I gave it 2-star rather than a 1, was because throughout the book you get, so there's obviously the text, and then you get like conversations between Clarice, Simon and Jace, who've like are reading the book and they're like leaving notes to themselves and little drawings and stuff, which I did really like. And there is some beautiful drawings, and there's like illustrations and stuff throughout, but I didn't really learn anything different about it. It just felt like, I don't know, I didn't really like it very much. It was quite boring to me, and it also took me forever to read because, like I say, reading a 300-page textbook essentially in a readathon was perhaps not my smartest move, but yes, I've read it now, so I can go on to reading some of the short stories. I think the short stories from the Shadow Hunter collection I'll enjoy more because, like I said, this isn't really stories, that's the problem. It's like information, but yeah, not that interesting. Don't think I'd bother reading it again either. The 5th book I read this month was for the Scrappy-Doo prompt for the Scoobydooathon, and that was to read a book with less than 200 pages, and as I said in my TBR, I decided to try something completely different, and I read the Beano annual from 2016. I have a few of these Dandy and Beano ones, and yeah, it was a fun experience. I think I read this in like an hour. This got a 3-star from me. It was nothing special, to be honest. I think it's an annual, isn't it? It's got like the comic book kind of strips and stuff in it. It was fine. I feel like I prefer a graphic novel where there's a story throughout the whole thing. This is obviously the whole point of the annual, is that it's literally like small 1-page things, and yeah, it was fine. Like, it was interesting and it kept my attention for an hour, so like I'm gonna read the others I have, but it wasn't like groundbreaking brilliance. But yeah, I enjoyed it. I love Dennis the Menace too. I wish there was more of him in it. But yeah, 3-star from me, to be honest. For the 6th book that I read this month, again, was for the Daphne prompt for Scoobydooathon, which was the read a cover by book. And originally, I had every intention, I can't even remember now what I was going to read, but I was going to read something that I had a physical book of, and then I realised that I'd gone to work one day and completely forgotten to take my book with me to work, and I was so upset because I wanted to read and I knew I wasn't going to have time to finish it otherwise. So luckily for me, that's the reason why I have my Kindle on my phone, so when I have this problem I can just read a book on my Kindle. And so I decided to pick up Paper Girls, which is a graphic novel, and I have volume 1 on my phone, and it was a cover buy because when I picked it up I had no idea what it was about. It was a graphic novel I was interested in, and I'd heard great things about the like representation in Paper Girls, and so I thought, do you know what, I'm going to pick it up, and I'm really glad that I did. I did give it a 4-star. I will say one thing as well, I actually really enjoyed the experience of reading a graphic novel on my phone, like the Kindle app on my phone, because I found that when you scroll through, it like takes you to the next section straight away, and you kind of, although you don't get the feel of the whole page, for me, I tend to look at a graphic novel page and I don't know where I'm going and I can't follow it, and that takes me away from the story. So being able to like swipe through the little boxes was really, really good for me, and I personally really enjoyed that. So I would definitely recommend, if you sometimes find that graphic novels are very overwhelming, that might be a way of doing it, because I think that's definitely what I'm going to do in the future. But this follows a group of paper girls who live in this town, and they essentially deliver papers overnight, essentially, and there are monsters and lots of things happen. It's wonderful. I absolutely love it. There is, again, great representation in this one, and yeah, I just found it really fun to read. I just found it really, really fun read, and yeah, absolutely loved it, so would definitely recommend. I've really enjoyed my graphic novels. I've read maybe 2 or 3 this year now, and I've loved all of them so far. But I think Paper Girls, probably my favourite one I've read, I think. Then book number 7 is Pretty Little Liars by Sarah Shepherd. I had this on my Kindle ages ago and hadn't picked it up, but then Clint from Reads Readers was reading all of them before Scoobydooathon, I believe, and I decided that I was going to read the first one, like I say, because I had it on my Kindle. I did read this during the Scoobydooathon. I didn't read this for any particular prompt. I was just reading it on my Kindle again. I think that the day that I needed to read on my lunch break from my Kindle, this was also the one I started, because I finished the graphic novel and then realised I had more reading time to fill up, basically. But yeah, I really, really enjoyed Pretty Little Liars. If you don't know, it is essentially what the TV show Pretty Little Liars is based on, and it basically follows a group of 4 girls and one of their friends. So the 5th girl that was like part of their group went missing like a couple of years before, and they keep getting these messages from somebody called A, and they don't know how A knows all about them, and if it's really Ali and she's back, or whether it's somebody else that's using her name. And yeah, it's really, really good. I think I prefer the TV show to the books, which is not something I usually do. I didn't particularly love the first book. Like I said, I gave it a 3-star. It was okay. I don't know that I'd continue reading the books because I think the TV show for me just is what I need. So yeah, I don't know that I would continue, but it was an alright read at the time. Book number 8, and again for the Scooby-Dooathon, this one was for Scooby-Doo himself, and this is to read a book that starts with the letter R or has an author with the initial starting with an R, and I ended up sort of cheating because one of the words in the title starts with an R, so I'm going with it. This was also my favourite book of the month. If you watched my September favourites, which went up on Friday, you'll have seen that, yeah, I loved this book. It was a 5 out of 5 star read. This is My Cousin Rachel by Daphne du Maurier, and this is definitely my favourite du Maurier book that I've read, although I've loved all 3 that I have read. This follows... Hi guys, sorry if the angle has changed and the lighting has changed and I'm wearing something else, and yeah, I've just had to go to an emergency appointment with my dad because he's really not very well, and yeah, we had the emergency doctors, so very stressful for a minute there. But I was literally mid filming, so I thought I was going to try and get it all back to exactly the same and whatever, but I figured you guys would understand. So instead, let's go on. Where was I? I think I was talking about My Cousin Rachel. I was. This one. So this, again, was the 8th book that I read in the month of September. This is my favourite book of the month, for sure. This follows, it's really hard to explain what it follows, but it follows a man named Philip, who, his, like, best friend slash the guy who kind of is everything to him, it's his relationship with his friend's wife after his friend dies, and it's about suspicion, and yeah, there's so many things in this. It's really all about like the human mind and suspiciousness and stuff like that. I don't really know how else to explain it because I really don't want to give anything away, but it's amazing. Really, really great read. 100% recommend. Like I said, definitely my favourite Daphne du Maurier, and 100% a 5 star read. Then at number 9 is the last book I read for the Scooby-Dooathon, and also it was the group book, so this was for the Meddling Kids prompt. This was for the Mystery Machine prompt to read the group book, and this was Meddling Kids by Edgar Cantero. I was really excited when I decided to pick this one as the group read for the Scooby-Dooathon, because this literally is Scooby-Doo gender role swapped and like name changes to stop like copyright, I guess. But this basically follows a group of 4 kids and their dog, and in 1977 they were part of unmasking the elusive Sleepy Lake monster, and basically it is like 13 years later, yeah, 13 years later, and it's still calling out to them, and something's not quite right about the things that happened, and it can't really be explained by just a man in a mask. And yeah, it is a horror novel, it's described as, but I don't really know how I would potentially like characterize this. This is kind of that, it has a lot of like paranormal elements, magical elements, it does have that horror side. I really didn't like it, and also I don't know, I feel like I didn't like the way this was written. So there were a few people that did like this, and when I spoke to them about why they liked it, they said that they thought it was supposed to be like a satire, or kind of like supposed to be like that B movie, like is it called the B movie, like the horror film, like the really rubbish kind of trashy ones that you kind of love anyway. And I can kind of understand that, but it was the writing I didn't like. And this book is literally like 500 pages. It's like 450 pages long, and I feel like it could have been done in literally half of that. Like, this is a chunky book, and yeah, I don't feel like it needed to. I didn't enjoy it. I don't think this is the genre for me particularly. Yeah, it was not a successful read, unfortunately. However, I am glad that I've read it, and yeah, I do understand the Scooby-Doo elements to this, so I do see that. So if you are like a hardcore Scooby-Doo fan and that's what you're reading this for, you'll enjoy it. If you're reading this for like the horror, like mystery element, I don't think that you'll find that, if that makes any sense. But I do feel like this is pretty much Scooby-Doo personified, so it works in some ways and not so much in others, but yeah, I wasn't a fan. Next up, I read a book that I was sent on NetGalley, so a big thank you to Agora Books for sending me this one. This was a book that I was sent a few months ago now, and although this book was originally published in 1995, this was actually a republish. That's why they sent me the NetGalley arc. That's why they sent me the e-arc, basically, and this is Suspect by Nicholas Rea. This follows Inspector Pemberton, who is running a team, and one of the people on his team is somebody who's just come back off of being off sick because he killed somebody in the line of duty, and there was a lot of kind of backlash about that from the victims' families, and yeah, lots of things happened, and then it's about the new case that they're trying to solve, and it's about that and what happens. This was really, really interesting. I gave it a 3-star in the end. It wasn't my favourite, however I do think that I will probably enjoy this series more if I read books later on in the series, because I know that there's quite a few in this. I think that this is one of those books that I felt like there was a lot of kind of explanation and a lot of setup without being completely successful. I didn't particularly love all of the characters. The guy who's come back off of being off sick, I really didn't like his character, and although I don't think you're supposed to think he's like the best thing ever, I just didn't really, I didn't get him, I think, and I feel like you probably needed to for the book to be successful, but I actually did still really enjoy it. Like I say, it was a 3-star, so it was okay. It was an enjoyable read. It's just not something that's going to stick with me, and I won't really probably remember it in a couple of months' time. But again, no, I would say a massive thank you to Agora Books for sending that to me on NetGalley, because I do love to read e-arcs. So yeah, thank you very much. We then have the book that you all chose for me. So last month my September TBR was my James Patterson edition, so I gave you 3 James Patterson books that I wanted you to decide which one I was going to read, and you all chose First to Die by James Patterson, which is the first book in the Women's Murder Club series, and this is probably my favourite James Patterson series to date. Obviously this is only the first book, but it's my favourite first book in a series that he's done, and actually it's probably quite up there with my favourite book that he's written that I've read so far. This follows 4 women who, like I say, are all in this, they kind of made their own little like women's murder club. It has Lindsay, who is a homicide inspector. You have Claire, who's a medical examiner, who is Lindsay's best friend. You have Cindy, who's a reporter, and you have Jill, who is an assistant DA. And it's about all 4 of them coming together to try and figure out who is killing these married couples off. And yeah, I absolutely love this. The 4 main the girls in this are all amazing, and they're fleshed out so well. Like, I feel like each one of them was like, initially I was quite worried that they would all blend together and I would struggle to figure out which one was which, but they had such distinct personalities and I absolutely loved them all. It's predominantly told from Lindsay's point of view, so she is the homicide inspector. It's very much her point of view from like throughout, but I do think the other girls are very, very like evident in it, and yeah, I absolutely love this. I cannot wait to read more in the series, and yeah, really, really excited that you all picked this for me, because again, you did another great choice. You always pick great ones for me, so yes, I loved this. Next up, we have a non-fiction book that I started reading for Julie from Hungry Bookworm's non-fiction readathon. That was at the end of August. Yeah, right at the end of August, and it was also taking place the first week of September as well. I started reading this then, and because of Scoobydooathon, this kind of got put to the back burner, but I did finish it eventually. I was reading this at work, and people thought it was a bit strange, I think. But it is Stiff by Mary Roach, so this is The Curious Lives of Human Cadavers, and this was really interesting. This is not a massive book, it's about nearly 300 pages, and I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it a 4-star. I did really find it fascinating. It is definitely a book that I couldn't read really fast. Like, there's no way I would have been able to read, like, I kind of was reading like a chapter a day on my lunch breaks, which was not the best choice to read. Like, I basically was literally sat reading, and my friend at work was like, oh, what are you reading about? And I was like, oh, I'm just reading about cannibalism, or I was just reading about like dissection or something throughout my lunch break. But you know what, I'm not particularly squeamish when it comes to reading about like gory stuff personally. Like, if you are, then I would say don't read this while you're eating. I'm not really that squeamish about stuff like that, so this didn't really affect me in that way, so I was quite like I quite enjoyed that. But yeah, I definitely think some people may be like, what are you doing? But yeah, I just think it was a really interesting read. This follows, this is obviously Mary Roach herself. She's a journalist, and this I believe is her first book. And there are different chapters, so I think there's 12 altogether. Things like human crash test dummies. There is about how they can figure out what happened in an airplane crash in terms of the bodies. Medicinal cannibalism. How the different ways that they're looking at of being able to like composting bodies rather than cremating or burying, like lots of different things. Really interesting, and yes, I absolutely loved this. Really recommend if you love non-fiction and you like to read about dead things. So yeah. Next up, you may remember if you watched my Charlie and Emily book haul that I did when I went to go and see them. I picked up some of the Penguin Little Black classics and the modern classics, like the little ones. So the next one I read this month was Dark Days by James Baldwin. This is a set of 3 essay collections by James Baldwin, who is, I believe, a black man living in America, and it follows him talking about personal and political kind of ideas on race and that kind of thing. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 3-star. I really liked the first story, or the first essay in this I should say, but I felt like the second one was a bit weaker, and I did enjoy the third one. The second one was not my favourite, so that's why I gave this a 3-star and no higher. But the first one definitely really stuck with me, and it talked about what happened like when you're born, about nobody having ideas about race, and that it's definitely society ingraining it into people. And yeah, I did really enjoy this collection and got a lot from it. So yeah, I definitely would recommend. Again, this is the 38th Penguin Modern little classic thing. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. So yeah, I would definitely recommend. I definitely want to read more James Baldwin, yeah, and see kind of what else he's published. The penultimate book that I read this month was one of my favourite reading experiences that I've ever had, and this was a buddy read that I did with the beautiful Victoria from What Victoria Read and Nicole from A Beautiful Chaos of Books. We talked about a couple of months ago, we talked on Twitter about reading of this particular book together because we all had it, and yeah, it was a really great experience. I absolutely loved it. I will also say that Nicole and I have done buddy reads before, but I've never buddy read anything with Victoria, but we have now already decided on our next one when that's going to be, so I'm very excited about that. But it is Unnatural Causes by Dr. Richard Shepherd, the life and many deaths of Britain's top forensic pathologist. And this was amazing. This literally is a 5-star read for me, without a doubt. I loved the reading experience of reading it with the girls. We had some great chat about the things in this, and I learned loads. This is basically about Dr. Richard Shepherd, who is a forensic pathologist who has performed over 23,000 autopsies, and this takes us through his life, and it talks about not only the kind of physical autopsies and the things that he can learn and the different bits and bobs like that, but it does also go into his mental health as well, and about how he has lived with what he does and the things that he struggles with and how that helps. And yeah, and it really does talk a lot about, although I knew some stuff about this, like having read Stiff previously in the month, obviously there was bits I'd read and I'd heard about, but this was really succinct. It was really thought-provoking, and also really well written. I think Dr. Richard Shepherd is amazing. I've seen him on the Autopsy programme, if you've seen that on TV, where he talks about like famous celebrities who've died and their kind of the causes of death and things. But this is really fascinating. I found myself literally learning so much, and every day we would read like 60 pages, and I just wanted to keep reading, to be honest. This was really brilliant. I think if you like things like it does have slight vibes of like This Is Gonna Hurt by Adam Kay. It doesn't have quite the humour of those ones. This is very much a bit more serious, but it has that kind of like a real life look at something in the medical profession, and also I read a few months ago, I can't remember what it was called now, but it was the ambulance one about the paramedic. I can't remember the name of it, like Tales of Tears, I can't remember what it was called, but that one and this, those two both have a lot of humour, whereas this one doesn't really have that. But yeah, I found this really fascinating. I think if you're interested in this subject, you'll definitely like this book. And yeah, I can't wait to read another book with the girls in November. And then the 15th and final book that I read in the month of September was another one of the modern classics. This one is Till September, Petronella by Jean Rhys. Now, Jean Rhys wrote Wild Sargasso, which was one of my favourite books at school, and this is 4 short stories all about women who are lost adrift, down but not quite out. And the first story is about a young girl living in the Caribbean. Then you have an adult, then there's one about old age, and then there's one about beyond that. And I really loved this. Again, this was a 4-star. A couple of the stories were better than the others. I think I Used to Live Here Once, which is the kind of beyond story, was really impactful and I loved it. I really liked the second and third story as well. The first one didn't quite stick with me quite so much, but I did really enjoy it anyway. Loved all of them, and yeah, I would definitely recommend. I don't really think there's much else I can say about it because it is such a short book and I wouldn't want to, like, I'd give anything away really, but yeah, great read, and another one of these that I'm really glad that I've read. So there you are, guys. That is the 15 books that I read in the month of September. Again, this is a really long video, I know it is, but I do want to do my video shout out, and today I want to shout out Ali from the channel Hardback Hoarder. Ali has always been a channel I've loved. She's really personable, and her channel is so like diverse, and she talks about so many different things. She comes up with some great video ideas, and I completely love everything she posts. I think she's wonderful. I think that you should all go and check her out. I'm sure most of you do anyway. But give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you next time for another video. Bye guys.